All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our February community meetup. We have a pretty packed agenda. So we're going to do the community celebration. We'll have product updates. We have a data context update with Chathan. And then Pavel is going to be presenting his integration experience with GX and open data discovery. And then Ruben is going to be presenting AWS S3 data validation, documentation, and GX part 1. So this way you have to come back for part 2. And then we will have the wrap up. Okay. We're hiring. Check out jobs at greatexpectations.io. Yeah, we're getting lots of interviews are coming in, starting to fill up these positions. So jump on them while they're still up. Let me know if you have any questions about the roles. Happy to answer and point you to the right person who owns each position. All right, so moving on to the project and community stats. We added 255 new members, closing in on that 10,000 goal. I'm sure we'll be there soon enough. I don't know what happened here, but there was just a massive drop off. Maybe PyPy broke on that day, if anybody knows, but otherwise still nice little steady incline for PyPy downloads. I'm seeing 7.5 million last month, but who knows what this is about. Moving along. So thanks and kudos. These are the contributors to on GitHub over the past 30 days. Thanks to Tiago, Atai, Jiri, Ruan, Jose, Michael, Hadas, some other names, Kirill, Ming, Mayan, Joel. Joel has the best avatar. Mateus, Swit, Prachi, Anurag, James, Ankar. Sorry if I mispronounce your names. Usually I try to take some time to look up how to pronounce people's names beforehand. Today I did not have time. But here are some of the contributions. There was a lot. This is a ton. This is a ton of people contributing in 30 days. That's really, really cool. So thanks to everybody who's contributed. Okay, Slack contributors, even more than last time, which is excellent. I see a bunch of new people and repeat people have come in, like Thiago and Alexi. I think Lori, I haven't seen you around too much, so welcome. Thank you so much for helping out in Slack. Thanks to Han, Karen, Ardasha, Amari, Javier, Andres, Ankar, and Taruga. Yeah, thanks so much. It's really important to have everybody helping each other in Slack. There's only so many of us here at GX to help everybody, so it really goes a long way. All right, I'm going to hand it off to Susie for the product update. Do you want me to do the slides, Susie, or do you want to do the slides?
Yes, you can. Thank you, Kyle.
Right, no
Hi,
problem.
everyone. My name is Susie. I briefly introduced myself last time. I'm a PM. I recently joined Great Expectations, and I work on the open source side. So I'll do a quick reminder. So our roadmap is guided by the following claim that we want to make boldly and honestly. Claim is that Great Expectations is powerful and expressive, and after years of development and widespread adoption by data practitioners, the core APIs are robust, stable, and thoroughly tested. And best of all, it's easy to get started. So this is what we're aiming for, and I'll also summarize our core themes for the year. It's in the next slide, Kyle. Yeah, so as before we mentioned, the main theme for the year is usability. You will see a lot of projects that we're working on. We're trying to simplify and streamline your experience. Today, we'll actually talk a little bit more about the Fluent data sources. And yeah, later in the year, you'll see sorts of other projects where we're always simplifying. Yeah, so the second theme, you can go back, Kyle, one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's community. Yeah, we're continuing to work on, go up, stay there. Just go up one. So back to the core themes, I just wanna highlight our core themes. Yeah, so the second theme is community. So we will continue to try to respond to all PRs within one business day. The third theme is capabilities. As I said, we'll be working on some new features, the new data sources, batch metrics, multi-batch expectations. You'll hear more details here. And then finally, quality is a big theme. As you probably remember from last month, we've been working on better doc strings. We're always continuing to build better test suites and type hints and all that. So yeah, this is a quick reminder of the themes. And then now I'll dive into a bit more about what we're actually working on. So this past month, we really focused all of our effort on the fluent data sources. You probably remember hearing about this last October, November. Dawn and Tal were talking about this effort. I think they called it maybe new style data sources, fangled data sources, but we're converging on the name. We'll be calling this fluent data sources. And basically, in a nutshell, what this means is that we're trying to make the onboarding experience getting started very smooth. I've included a very brief screenshot here of what we're trying to achieve this month. You'll see here 4 lines of code. It's very simple. You can set up a context without any configuration. Later in today's update, you'll hear more details about it, how this works. And yeah, I'm not going to dive into a whole lot here, but you can see that it's getting a lot shorter. And the big news that I have is that by the end of the month, we're actually wrapping up all the changes for these fluent data sources, and we will be doing a soft launch. What this means is that we'll open up the floor to all of you in the community to start testing what we've been working on. Give us some feedback. Is your life actually simpler with these changes, or can we improve anything? There will be no breaking changes, and you can always still use sort of the block style data sources. So no worries, nothing will break, but we invite all of you to participate in the first few weeks of March. And yeah, reach out to me or Tal on Slack, or reach out to support. Let us know what you think. Everything should be documented. Yeah, I hope this makes sense. Again, in a nutshell, it will be all around connecting to data in a much quicker way. So yeah, let us know what you think. Now we'll do some demos and you'll get actually details of what this all means.
Cool. Thanks, Susie. All right, so we're moving on to demo time. We're going to hand it off to Chetan for data context cleanup.
Yep.
Chetan, you probably just saw how I did on slides. I don't know if
you're good. I trust you. Don't worry.
Okay.
we'll work through it together. I'm Chetan Kinney, software engineer here working on the platform team. And I, alongside the platform team, have been working on cleaning up the data context and sort of the behavior and the APIs the last couple of months. And we want to talk to you a little bit about that work and how that might impact you as the user base. So this sort of falls under that usability principle that Susie had mentioned. We really want to make sure that we're improving the user experience. And historically, the data context has had some issues in that regard that we've been, working diligently to resolve. I think the primary goal here is consistency in multiple regards, and I'll delve into that in a little bit more detail, but I think we've sort of split this into 2 main concepts. One would be state management, and the second one would be standardizing our CRUD API. So the first part, state management. Historically, we've had some inconsistencies when it comes to the saving of Great Expectations objects, whether they be data sources, suites, checkpoints, etc. The way in which we do that wasn't always super well documented or well known. A great example of this would be our add data source method would have this granular flag called save changes, and that would sort of conditionally determine whether you were updating the state of your context in that runtime instance, or if you were actually persisting the changes for future sessions. And so without really diving into the source code or without reading, the documentation, it was difficult to really understand, if I'm running this method, when is that actually impacting, my file system or cloud or any other sort of environment. And so we've wanted to change that for some time, and we've sort of done that over the last couple of weeks to get this in a spot where if you run any CRUD method, it'll always impact the underlying store. It's consistent behavior across different objects. Our documentation now reflects this, such that users know the implications of their methods and don't have to, check Git or rush to, look at their project to make sure that their change is actually saved. Regardless of the method you call, you'll see this sort of behavior. And then any sort of granular flags like save changes we've noted here have been deprecated using sort of our deprecation method. All right, and then the next part is the standardization of CRUD. And this is sort of multifaceted. I think the first part is just naming. We've been sort of inconsistent historically in terms of naming. We'd have methods like save expectation suite or create expectation suite, but we have add data source or another sort of verb. And that made the discoverability of methods difficult. If you were using one particular workflow and you wanted to work with another object, you'd have to go to the documentation to understand what to sort of use. And so what we've done is across the hierarchy of what we're considering our core sort of top level objects, we've added consistent sort of methods. Our documentation that our developer experience team has been working on quite diligently will sort of reflect this through this CRUD matrix, as well as explanations for the different methods, what they do, what sort of behavior you can expect, and then just ensuring that, methods or objects that previously didn't have certain mechanisms, like profilers used to not have an update mechanism, now have it so that consistently I'm able to, just dive in and have the same behavior as I'm configuring my sort of project. All right, next slide. Continuing on that note, another issue we had was when it came to sort of namespace collision. So if I was adding an object and I had an object that previously existed in my store or file system, the expected behavior was a little variable depending on the object I was working with. So expectation suites might overwrite, data sources may throw an error. And so without really delving into the sort of source code, you wouldn't have a sense of what the expected behavior would be, right? You'd run into runtime issues, and the inconsistency made for a bad sort of user experience. And so to answer the question, do we overwrite or not? We've leveraged our new sort of verbiage in this new style API. So simply put, and this will all be noted in our documentation as well, but add will always create a new object, or error if there's an existing object with the same name. Update will update an existing object, but error if there isn't something already persisted. And then add or update is sort of upsert in a sense, where it'll save an object and conditionally run add or update depending on the existence of a given object. And so all these three methods allow for user workflows. Now, we do note that there might be a case where you'll run into a runtime error where you previously didn't have it, but the idea is we want to be very intentional in the methods we use, in the verbiage, and sort of making sure that as a user, you can quickly look at our docs, read these different CRUD methods and understand what they do, why they do. And if you run into an error, it'll inform you and tell you the exact reason why things are going awry, as opposed to possibly overwriting something implicitly or not realizing, and then having downstream implications where you have to debug and figure things out. So a small but subtle change that we think will sort of help the usability of the product. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about migration. Now, I did just say it was a subtle change. Hopefully this isn't a big sort of overhaul to your workflows, but we want to make sure that users that are running these deprecated methods are sort of informed in regards to how to move forward and how to better adhere with their new style API. So the way in which we do this, and we've been doing this with other parts of the code base, is through deprecation warnings. We have a very sort of strict format in how we do these. We always state the version that something was deprecated, when we'll stop support. So generally we wait for 2 minor versions using semantic versioning. So you have some time if you want to use the old methods, as well as telling you how best to move away from this. So if you run create expectation suite, which is deprecated as noted in this list, it's going to say, hey, this is deprecated, but use add expectation suite or use add or update. And those methods are more aligned with how we see the product moving forward. And you'll be sort of informed in working in that manner. Now, another thing is our documentation should all be updated to utilize this new method. So, or this new API. So if you copy and paste snippets or you walk through any of the scripts we have, you shouldn't be running into a number of errors. Same with the notebooks that are generated from the CLI. The whole idea is we want this to be a subtle transition that makes the usability better, but doesn't dramatically change the way you work with the product. It should be a minor change, maybe a method call here or there, if applicable. And if you're a new user, our documentation or getting started tutorial should guide you through the new style API without any issues. Now, if you see any problems arise, of course, let us know in GitHub or and our Slack, we want to make sure that you're not running into a ton of issues in regards to deprecation warnings all over the place. But we've been pretty diligent in trying to curb that.
Great. Thanks so much, Jathan. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat here or in our community Slack chat to follow up on this stuff. And we'll help you out. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna hand it off to actually Ruben. I think you're last. I think I'm handing it off to Pavel.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. All right, Pavel. I'm going to stop sharing and I'll let you take over. Thanks so much feel free to introduce yourself and thanks so much for presenting.
Okay, thank you for introducing. Let me share my screen. Okay. And now we can start. Okay. Let's move it out. Sorry, some problem. Okay. Today I want to share with you my experience, how I start working with Great Expectations and how we at the end implemented integration using Great Expectation actions for open data discovery. Open data discovery is a data platform which provides some useful feature for everyone who work with data, some feature like observability, data lineage, and so forth, so on. But today we are going to concentrate on data trust feature. And for that feature, by my colleague recommendation, we decided to start writing integration for Great Expectations. And firstly, I want to say that I am not a data query engineer. I'm in charge of writing integration with external systems. And I decided, before writing that integration, I decided to do it in a way. I decided to get known closer how Great Expectation works under the hood and how our possible users will use our integration, take a look at their workflow. And I decided to start from documentation. And I went through all 4 steps. First steps for me was a setup. Here I have 2 options. I called git clone GX tutorials. It already has some already implemented projects, but I decided to start from scratch, just download Great Expectation and create empty project. Next part, it was decided what data we want to connect and how we can it connect. For simplicity, I decided to start with a file system, and there was 2 options. Probably I could use yellow chip data because the next article from documentation, they often refer to that data sample, but I decided to use my sample that I use for my integration. And next part was creating expectations, because I use CLI tool for me, and that CLI tool provides 3 ways how we can create expectations, but I was too lazy to create it manually, and I decided to do it in interactive way. And from that automatically created Jupyter notebook, I got some information how I can work with config files, how I can create expectation, how I can add them to the suite and store them. And the last step was how I can validate, how I can run that expectation against my data. And for me, there was no hesitation because I use the latest version. For me, there was one option to use checkpoint. After that, I got my demo project. Let's quickly look at that. Here I have my bank terms data, Great Expectation product with YAML config, where I connected my data folder using infinite assert file system data connector, some expectations, and checkpoint. I think we can try to run it. Not set checkpoint, but succeed checkpoint. Okay, here we go. Now I had completed my first Great Expectation project, but what about integration part? If we decided to create that integration without actions, it could probably looks like that. Architecture would look like that. For example, we could store results to some cloud, for example, in S3, and write service which parse that results and map them and ingest that information to open data discovery. That approach has some pros and cons, and to pros, I would add that when we have service like that, we can control what and when we parse. For example, we can run that service by cron or by scheduler, and we can add some filterware or cachedware. And because we communicate through that storage, our environment where great expectation used and where is open data discovery, they are separated and they might don't know about each other at all. But same way that additional layer have some problems that we need to think who will support that storage and does it work or not. And data model here is a problem for developers, for someone like me, because if I not so familiar with great expectations, I would just can download the results JSON files, and when I start working with them, I will have a problem because I need to guess what does that field and is it optional or not, and so on. I think that approach can be implemented on only when client already implemented the storage, but we decided that we do not want to push our clients to think not only about how they validate data, and same time they must think about they need to store that results to some storage. It isn't good, and this is where great expectation actions came to the scene. From documentation, I got that is just a Python class. We can treat it like a callback, which will be run by great expectation during runtime with validation results. It is a vary of already implemented action, like an email notifier or Slack notifier, but because we need to create integration for ODD, we need to create our custom action. And what is custom action? It is just a plain Python class we derived from validation action with overridden run method. And now let's take a look a little bit at their params, which that run has, and what kind of information we can extract from that params and map to our own structure. For example, from expectations with validation result, we can get test result at test config. From the identifier, by the identifier, we can identify is that solution was a cloud solution or open source solution, but I haven't used it yet. From data set, which is instance of validator class, we can extract names or links to the files. We can extract the name of our target data. Next to params I haven't used, they're optional, and what is interesting is the quarks. As I found that quarks can have a payload object, and that payload object, that means that every action in the chain of action list, they can add some useful and additional information about their execution to that payload. We can treat it as a context. And from that payload, we can, for example, from update data docs action, we can extract links to the automatically generated HTML files. And probably we can show that links to the user, for example, if they got used to work with that files. Okay, now we know what is action and what we need to do to write our first action, and it's time for live coding. what could go wrong during live coding. But before that, I want to say about my development process a little bit. Let's imagine that we already created our first brand new action, and we published it to the Conda or PyPy, never mind. And our users how they will use it. They probably will pip install our project, but for demo purposes and for development purposes, we can run command. Let me maybe increase my size. Okay. We can use that command with e-flag. That means we want to install package from local folder, and we will treat it as editable, and everything what I will change in that package will have effect on that environment. Okay, I have prepared one new model, and we can start write our new action. For example, okay, let's increase. Okay. For example, let's imagine Jake's meetup action, and as we know, now we need to derive it from validation class and override and run method. And let's add some method to the console. For example, hey. And now we are ready to use our action inside our checkpoint. Let me copy it. It will be useful. For that, your users just need to add new action to action list. Its name, no, DX. Meetup, create an action. We need to specify model by that field. Great Expectation will find our package and our model, and will trigger our class. It named meetup, and class name was DX meetup action. And now, okay, let's return it. And now if I run it, we will catch an error. Let's try. Okay, got it. I don't know is a bug or is a feature, but we got unexpected keyword. And if we will go to the validation action source code, here we can find that run method has quarks, and it proxies the params to the underscore run method, but that run method doesn't receive that param. Okay, thanks for Python. We can easily fix it. Let's add that. And now here we go. I hope it's okay. Yeah, we are okay. Next, what if we want to add some configuration to our custom action? What we want to add some fields, for example, how it works for update data docs action. For example, we want to set a message. I don't know. Again, use it. Okay, meetup. And how it will affect on our action. To cover that feature, it's a piece of cake. We can just rewrite init method. Here we need to add data context and our new param. And if we rewrite init method, we mustn't forget to call the super method on the parent class. In proxy our data context, let's store that message some field and use that message inside our business logic. Okay, here we go. Now we can run it again. Okay, yeah, hurrah, we are good. And I think that's a minimum knowledge which you can use to start writing your action, and you can add more business logic here. And let's take a look how we did it for open data discovery. Firstly, as I said, we want to extract target batch names, And for that purposes, we used validator class that encapsulates information about data connector, about expectations, what we want to validate, and how we want to validate it. And that validator class has execution engine. And by that execution engine, we can infer, for example, if that execution engine is instance of pandas execution engine, we can guess that we work with local files, and by that information, we can, for example, extract a path to the local file. And if it is an SQL Alchemy execution engine, we can guess that we work with some database, and we can, for example, get information about where the database service is hosted, target database, target schema, target tables. Okay, let's return to the action. We got that data sets. And as I said, from payload, we can extract some additional useful information. That function check if before our action updated that data doc action was executed, we can instruct that links to that HTML file and show it to the end user. And what is more interesting, how we parsed expectation result. Expectation result suite, it is aggregation of expectation validation result. And we just go through them and map them. For each expectation result, we extract config, because at ODD, we treat config as a separated entity. And because we treat it as a separated entity, we need to create unique name for that. But how we can do it? When users write their first expectation suite, we can see that there we can have same name for expectation, but they're different in their quarks. But how we get now which arguments each expectation receives, which is required by each expectations. And using that function, it provides functionality that by expectation name, we can get expectation class. And from that expectation class, we can take arguments name. And if we use it, we can concatenate that information from expectation class with information that user provides in the configuration file and create some unique name. Okay, we got map config, we map it, and now we need to parse a status. Getting a status was a straightforward, with one more point that I want to notice. Is it failed or is it what success we can get by that build? But where I start for a moment, because when I start working with GX and I open that generate HTML files, I have seen that message that that value not in list. And I thought I can find that information inside expectation validation result, but I didn't find it. And after spending some time reading source code, let me open the expectation core, I found an example where like that. Yeah. From that example, I got that if something failed, we can extract that information from the result object by that key. And we decided to use that information, but I'm not sure does it work for all expectations. But we decided for start to leave it at ease and just show that message that some values are failed. And I think that's all. We map it config, we map it to result. We can continue them to the array, ingest the data to the platform, and we can show to our users that we are good and your metadata was ingested to platform. And probably it is optional for us, we can add some additional information to the payload. Now we can run, I have prepared the checkpoint, which uses our ODD action, and we can try to run it. I hope it will be okay. Run failed. Yeah, here we go. It's failed because I have some failed data. And now if we go to Open Data Discovery, we can see that we have uploaded data to our platform. Yeah, we are good. And when we implemented our action, architecture changed a little bit. And for end user, it looks like Great Expectation directly sends data to the ODD, but under the hood, it uses our action. And that's way, for me, it has some pros, like because we are working with APIs that developers prepare for us, we write our code by contract, we can be sure that our code will work inside GX ecosystem. And using GX models, it is a reference to the oldest problem. Now we can work with classes, we can run method on them, we can get a property, for example. And next, I would add an instant reaction. That means every time when users run test validation, or for example, Airflow using Great Expectation operator run our tested, that information will be mapped and stored at Open Data Discovery platform. And for cons, I would add that we can writing action, we can affect on user experience. We must be attentive writing that action because, for example, we can, if we wrote our action in an effective way, we can freeze their terminal, or we can pollute their std out log or std error log, as I did for the first steps. But as my colleague says, just write good code and don't write bad code, I think is a great piece of advice. Yeah, and it's the end of my presentation, but it isn't end for us because we are going to add some new features. As an example, I want to test how it works with a cloud solution. And at the end, I wanted to say my thanks and kudos for everyone who created that product, because for someone like me who write integration, it is really important to have user-friendly documentation and well-defined an API. Yes, it was really pleasant to write that integration. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Pavel. That was awesome. And a little cliffhanger too. We'll see what comes out, what comes out next for this project. We'll see what comes out next for this project. You said you're gonna do more stuff, so we'll stay tuned.
What do you mean by that?
Oh no, you said you're gonna end up doing more. You're gonna add more features, right?
Yes, add more features. I mean that because now, if we take a look, for example, for SQL Alchemy, now we support, because we decided to do it in iterative way, we decided just for the first step to add Postgres dataset. And after I created a video about that integration, our colleagues start using Snowflake in ecosystem like Airflows and data that's stored at Snowflake. And it was okay, but she got some problem. For example, sometimes some data source can surprise you. For example, Snowflake can use the database name concatenated with schema name. And there is a place, yeah, there is a violated little bit open source principle, because with new data sources, we need to go to that file and add and change it. But we decided to do it that way, and I'm going to create new integration with another databases. And I want to try to connect my data with S3 and add a cloud solution.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we look forward to that. Yeah, keep us updated on your progress.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Pavel. All right. We have one more presentation. Ruben from our DevRel team, Senior Developer Advocate. I'm going to present on AWS, part 1. So Ruben, you could take it away.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that, all right. Hey, everyone. So yeah, my name is Ruben Reduce. I'm a senior developer advocate for Great Expectations. And today I'm going to be talking to you and walking you through part 1 of a 2-part series. We hope that the second part will be done by next month for the next month meeting. I'm going to be talking you through about how to validate and document your data in AWS S3. This is a very common use case. And in order to do that, we're going to be using a new type of guides that we put out there. They are very comprehensive and end-to-end. And by end-to-end, I'm meaning it goes from the very basics of setting your software underpinnings and all the dependencies all the way through the end, which is when you can actually validate your data and document that data. These paths have been validated by us or vetted by us, and each of them specifying a specific use case. We're working on more additional ones, but for now we focused the first initial effort on AWS, the different services in AWS. You can see them right now. If you go to our doc site, it's going to be on the left navigation bar. You're going to find integration guides, and underneath that, you're going to find another menu called Using Great Expectations with AWS. Here's where all these guides will be. For this, I'm going to be using Great Expectations with Pandas S3. For the sake of brevity and time, we need to make some assumptions for this. We're going to assume that you already gone through the first part of that guide, which is going to be setting up your Python versions, the correct Python versions, the pip, AWS CLIs, etc. We're also going to assume that you have access, read-write access to at least one bucket in AWS where you're going to be storing or retrieving data from. And then obviously, you're going to be needing a bucket where you have all of the data that you actually want to analyze. The objectives of this short demo that I'm doing today is basically I want to set you up so that way by the end of it, you'll be at a good stopping point for part 2. And then I hope to help you so that you can see how to set up a validation store, an expectation store, and then a Datadogs website. All right. For that, I need to move. I would like to share. I'm going to have to share here 2 different things. Okay. I need to share my command. Well, I'm going to share the whole desktop because otherwise it's just going to be confusing. All right. All right. So as you can see, so like I'm already in a command line, and then, well, before I jump into that, sorry, I'm going to show you the guys that I'm going to be walking through walk you through. And then as you can see, right, like we have here the prerequisites just to run this particular thing where we go through all the setup steps. And then we make sure that you have the correct versions, that you have the Python virtual envs and all this, to make sure that you have the correct credentials for AWS, etc. So before we even get started, we walk you through all those steps to make sure that you are correctly set up. All right. So the first thing is going to be creating what we call a data context in Great Expectations. This is sort of like a project level view of all of our the things that we need to run validations. And the first thing is just going to be running that command that we're told on the screen. For instance, we do Great Expectations init. And then we're going to see an output similar to that, like as we can tell. And we're going to say yes, of course, because we want to create it. All right, and then it's going to create the structure within that directory that you're in, as well as possibly follow-up steps. All right. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is to show. We're going to do is configure the expectation store for AWS. Right now, we don't have any. This is a greenfield project. We don't have any expectations. So but this is going to eventually create a place where the expectations that you do create and then you add to suites, etc., are going to be stored in. Normally, they're stored locally by default, But here we're obviously trying to make sure how it works with the WSS3. And all of this, all the files that we're going to be, the file that we're going to be messing with, I like to call the good old friend, Great Expectations, the YAML. This is the source of truth for Great Expectations. And then, we're going to find the best way to do that is that we're going to find where we have this particular type of the definition, like you can see right here. And then we are going to copy and paste what they tell us from there, right? Like what we have here, they tell us to copy and paste that. And then after you copy and paste that there and you add your bucket name and the prefix that you want to give, remember the prefix, we're talking an AWS prefix, is just basically because the buckets in S3 do not actually support folders or directories. A way that normally you can fake directories is by basically adding a prefix to those objects. So that way it gives the impression of being a directory, but it's not, but it's a very handy way of organizing related issues. So we're adding this particular prefix to it. And then the second step before that is that we are going to come over here and add the that expectation that we just defined. We're gonna set it. This sets basically to active. This is like the active store. So you can have other, in this case, we have two, the expectation store and the expectations S3 store. You can have many of them, but then one of them is gonna be active and you can select it. You can select it by here, by doing so, okay? All right, so in addition to that, of course, we offer you the help in case that you happen to have a non-traditional S3 endpoint or a non-traditional AWS region. You can pass them as Boto3. Boto, by the way, is the official Python SDK library. And then you can have, this is a bit of a pass-through, so you can pass special configurations to it that are not necessarily part of the standard thing. As I already mentioned, this is the way that you make it active. And then the way that we're going to check that that is actually working is that we're going to copy that command, go back to the command line real quick, and then run that one, right? And then it will tell you that the one active is expectation S3 store. Oh, and this, by the way, this is not only not only checks this particular list item that uses the AP3, not only checks that you actually have the YAML correctly, that is correctly configured, but it actually makes sure that this the buckets or whatever store backend that you actually exists. And so, for example, if I already save that and I rerun that command, we should see a warning telling us that that there is something wrong with that particular store. And we get the particular store. All right, so if we delete back that, and now we move on. Okay, so then we're gonna set what is called after we set the expectation store, we give you optional instructions in case that you already have either a local existing project expectations that you want to quote unquote migrate into this. And then, or that you already have some existing expectations already in S3, this is how you would do it. But then again, this is something that we're assuming that this is a greenfield project, so therefore this should not be applicable. But we do, in this guide, we do offer that particular guide. All right, that particular instructions. Now, validation results. So eventually, after we validate our data, right, like with expectations, we use the validated, and then the results are going to be stored in a validations result file. Normally, again, it gets stored locally by default when you create the project. And then we're going to go ahead, very similar to the configuration of the expectation store, we're going to create the validation store in the very same section that we just added, is that we defined the expectation store. Now we're going to define the validation store right here. Okay, and then same diff is very similar in terms of the data that you need. And then you're going to activate it the same way, right? Like we go here and then the validation store. We add it here, and it has the same options because it's using Boto, the same type of options in the sense of like you can pass if you have a custom endpoint or a custom region name or whatever options you want to pass to Boto for the connection or the treatment of AWS, same thing. And again, if you already have validation results that you want to bring into this project, you do it as well. We show you the instructions in this guide. Again, we're assuming this is a brand new field. A greenfield project, so there should be nothing to do there. And then again, every time that you run the command for the command for listing the sources, it will go through the stores, sorry, and then it will go through all of this, whatever you have here as active, and it will make sure that they actually work and that they're actually correct. Okay, so then we move on to see the configure data docs. So in NIST3, right? Like, so data docs are sort of like the main way to visualize the UI to the, like it's not just a JSON file with results or something, but we actually have it in a coherent, more visually friendly way of seeing the results of those validations and to show you what your data looks like and where things might not be working. And then this is what data docs are, right, in a project. And so normally it gets produced into your desktop, and if you're working on your own small project, that's fine. However, if you want to share it, let's say with your team or your company, whatever, like we recommend that you have it in a general hosting place where they can be updated. Assuming that you don't have a bucket already, we show you instructions how to set up that bucket. And the important thing here, I would say, to note is that the fact that since this will be a website, websites in general in S3 are publicly accessible buckets, and then you want to make sure that you lock it down at the very least how we're suggesting here, which is through a policy, and then you add whatever IPv4 or IPv6 that you happen to have, and then you lock it down that way. It can be many or it can be just one, but at least it gives you a little layer of security there, so that way people, the public, I guess the internet, is not potentially looking into your data docs, right? Okay, so once you have, you apply that policy, and that bucket is created. In our case, we're going to assume that you already have it created and it was given to you. You already know that. So we're going to go to the doc side in our friend Great Expectations YAML. And then under the data doc sites, this is the one that gets rendered by default by the scaffolding. And this is where we are going to use. Basically, we copy and paste what was given to us in the S3, and then we come back, and then we added the demo, their docs, etc. Right? And then the way that we're going to build the site, and then that we just defined, and then we're going to copy that command. If I can copy that command, and we're going to run it. This, depending on if you already have expectations that you've already used, that you've already run, these could take a little while. So it really depends how much you have there. And then also for the sake of this demo, you don't need to, but I'm going to copy this so that way we can then check out what happens, right? So it's a yes, and then it's going to build the data docs. And then after the data docs are built, then you can also, this is the part where we give different options for your, for the data docs and the website that you want to, for the bucket. So that way you might save some steps later on. So now it's the data docs are built. And then if we were to go to that website that we just created, then we can see I've already created and run through preparing for this demo, but this is, like your data, this is what you would see in your index site. These are all the validations that we've already done, etc. Anyway, so back to, back to here. Okay, so then after that, again, we give you the options if you want to skip the index HTML. So basically this will work next time. It will automatically serve the index HTML. You can do that as well. And, with that, all that having been said, we finally get to part 2, which is, like, I guess, the real fun part of this demo. Unfortunately, this will be for next month. But now that we have set up all the, all the stores, all the underpinnings, this part should be a lot more fun, because then we can actually focus on how to validate the data, how to get the data, and then how to display that data in the docs. All right, that's it.
Thanks, Ruben. Way to leave everybody wanting more. Come for the next meetup to see the fun demo. Anyone who showed up late, please feel free to watch the recording. We'll post that later on in the week. And we do have a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions, could probably just take like one, realistically. If not now, feel free to jump in our Slack and ask there. All right, cool. Well, thanks so much for coming, everyone. We'll see you next month. Thanks, Ruben. Thanks, Pavel, Chathan, Susie. Thanks everyone who presented. See you soon.
Later all.
Everybody.
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. See you soon.